What's going on, y'all? It's JD PicKell. Today on the Hard Count, we're going to talk conference realignment and why that might be closer for the Big 12 than you might think. Conference Media Day is fast approaching, and with it, the number one question every single year for Bob Bowlesby is, hey, are we going to expand? Are we going to see realignment? What's going on with that? Every single time he answers, no, not on our radar. It's on the back burner. We're not looking to expand. We're not looking to realign. And potentially that could be true. If history were to repeat itself, the Big 12 has never gone out and been on offense in terms of adding a team. It's always they lose a team, and then they go in the market to try and make the conference whole again. Now, the reason why this might be closer than we think is every 6 years, 6 years has been the longest streak we've seen for a Power 5 conference to realign. Now, obviously, that was in 2014 with Maryland and Rutgers joining the Big 10 and Louisville joining the ACC. So in 2021, we're past that 6-year mark. It's here. Realignment is coming, and it is coming fast. Now, the thing that runs all of this, money, TV, suits. So you look at the contracts, in 2025 is when the Big 12 has their contract up with ESPN and Fox. And call me crazy, but I think the Big 12 wants to have 12 teams as opposed to the 10 they have right now. So let's say that they do lose a team and they then go on offense to try and add 3 teams, or maybe they just go and try and add 2 teams. Who's the team to leave? You look at Kansas. I think they've been abysmal, obviously, in terms of football for the past however many years. The talk about them dropping down to FCS happens all the time. I don't know if that's realistic, but then you look at basketball, which has kept them in the conference. A lot of legal allegations going on right now. Is that what gives them the boot from the conference? We'll see. West Virginia makes a lot of sense. I think for me, I'm more on the side of they're probably okay making their check being in the Big 12. If they were to leave, it would make a lot of sense because of the geographic location. But as a whole, I don't know that they have a lot of other suitors saying, hey, we want West Virginia in our conference. Then you look at schools that would probably be able to sustain themselves financially. Those are the ones that I look at and say, okay, maybe you could leave and be fine on your own as an independent or join another conference. Oklahoma, they have enough money. I think they're probably okay just being in the Big 12, winning the thing. It feels like every year, if not every other year in different sports. They're probably happy in the Big 12 and having the Red River rivalry. Now, the team that makes the absolute most sense to me with the entire conversation around who would leave is the University of Texas at Austin. First off, they have the largest athletic budget out of anyone in the country. They gross the most athletically out of anyone in the country. So they have the money to go off and be independent. Also, it would be just like Texas to want to do this. They've never really associated themselves super closely with the Big 12. They've never really wanted to be that closely tied to a conference. Texas wants to be Texas, and that's how they want to be known by. And they've obviously done a great job of branding. They're confident that brand can carry themselves. Their booster power has been obviously a bit of a problem for them in the past, but also allows them to have this conversation right now. The Longhorn Network is proof that they're happy being their own thing and trying to establish their own brand nationally, and they've done that. So I think Texas is the team that you look at and say, yeah, maybe you could go off and be your own thing independently. Now, the thing that Texas runs into, which could be an issue if they wanted to go independent, is the scheduling piece. Now, Oklahoma maybe would still play them for the Red River rivalry's sake, but Baylor's not going to play them. Iowa State's not going to play them. Oklahoma State's not going to play them. Maybe Texas A&M, you rekindle that and you get that rivalry back. But as a whole, it becomes a lot of trouble, I think, for Texas to schedule both basketball and football if they were to take the dive into being independent. Again, it makes sense because with how much money they gross, to say, hey, we want to take that whole pie instead of giving the Big 12 a slice, more power to them, but I think you run into some issues. So the conversation becomes, if Texas does leave, who are the teams that you add? The first team that comes to my mind is a Houston or an SMU, and that would just be a lot of fun. From a fan's perspective, you have 2 major cities, 2 major markets in Dallas and Houston, and let's say UT stays and you get Austin as well. I mean, that would just be awesome to make the Big 12 completely locked into the state of Texas and make that kind of their own brand. That'd be a lot of fun, but I don't think that'll happen because for that to get passed through, the presidents have to vote on that. And so I have a hard time believing the presidents at Baylor, at UT, at all across the other schools. I don't think they probably want to say, hey, we're going to bring in 2 other Texas schools and give them the firepower to be labeled a Big 12 program. I don't think they want to take that dive. I think there's too many cooks in the kitchen when it comes to recruiting. Another team that you look at, I think, is potentially one of the other American athletic schools, whether it's UCF or Memphis. That would be fun from a competition perspective, but geographically, that's really far away. I don't know if UCF wants to jump at the first Power 5 conference that gives them a shot to enter, and I don't know that Memphis would really make a whole lot of sense in terms of the geographic location either. I get West Virginia's all the way out there, but I'm not sold on that potentially being a great fit. Now, two schools that I think would be a phenomenal fit, and Andrew Robertson has been on the precipice, on the cutting edge of this entire conversation throughout the whole, I guess, orchestration of this argument, of this video, of the hard count, is Arizona and Arizona State. Now, Arizona and Arizona State are obviously unhappy with what they have right now in the Pac-12 because they're not making a whole lot of money. You're making about $34 million a year on average as a Pac-12 team, and you can make just under $40 million a year if you join the Big 12. And who's to say that number doesn't go up if you join the Big 12 and have two programs like Arizona and Arizona State? Andrew Robertson made the point earlier, Phoenix is one of the largest markets in the entire country. Why would you not want to add that to the Big 12? Also, geographically, fans travel. Coaches already recruit the Big 12 very heavily. See Spencer Rattler, see Mark Andrews. So there's a lot of sense that can be made for the fans, for the coaching staffs, for the schools to have Arizona and Arizona State join the Big 12. So everyone benefits financially. Another team that I think you maybe look at is BYU. And I know this idea was sort of already rejected when BYU said, hey, some things don't line up with us in the student handbook and what you want to do in the Big 12, but let's just pretend for a minute they can get past that. BYU, outside of Texas, would have the largest living alumni in the entire conference. Also, if we're using social media as a proxy for fan engagement, BYU would have a larger following than Texas Tech, TCU, and Baylor. So all that's to say, there would be a lot of eyeballs on BYU if they entered the Big 12. I think they'd be able to be competitive. We've seen them compete with Power 5 programs, with USC, Texas in the past. Like, there would be good football, good basketball, good sports across the board being played if you add BYU. In addition, there's a lot of money coming along with it. For BYU, it makes sense financially too. You're making about $70 million a year right now. Baylor last year made just around $100 million. So you can stand to make more money, which is really what this is going to be all about at the end of the day. So in summary, I think BYU and both the Arizonas make a whole lot of sense. As a fan, I'd love to see some Texas schools get added, but probably doesn't fit logistically with what these presidents want to get done. Another school that gets talked about right now, Nebraska. Armstrong and Andrew were talking about this before we even made this video, and they were saying, hey, if you're Nebraska, you can come in here and be relevant again. Right now in the Big Ten, all they care about is their blue bloods. They care about Michigan State. They care about Michigan. They care about Ohio State. But right now, they don't care about anything outside of that with Nebraska. You come back to the Big 12 here in Nebraska, you are once again relevant, and that would be phenomenal financially for them and for the conference as a whole. Then you move into the college football playoff expansion conversation, which maybe that's a bit more of a rabbit hole to get down, but let's go down it for a second. The Big 12, year in and year out, has gotten an automatic bid. It's been Oklahoma, but it's been the conference champion, so maybe you get an automatic bid. If fans want to see more parity, they want to see these teams mix it up, and they want to see other teams in the conversation, in the playoff expansion mold, you could add more teams to the Big 12 and give them a chance. You give Arizona State a chance. You give those group of 5 teams you add a chance. So as a whole, it would make a lot of sense to add these teams because it would make them more money. It would make the playoff conversation more interesting. And as a whole, the Big 12 would just be more rounded out with having 12 teams instead of 10 because that makes no sense to have 10 teams in a conference that has called themselves the Big 12. So that's it for us here at The Hard Count. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. We're going to keep this party rolling, and we will see y'all next time.